Hey everyone, and welcome to yet another tutorial. And in this tutorial we are gonna talk a little about storyboarding. This is just an introduction video. I haven't really had the chance to work that much with storyboarding, and I haven't read all that much about it. All I know is that it's a new feature that came in Xcode 4.2 for iOS 5 development, and came together with Arc, the automatic reference counting. And I must admit that I absolutely love both of them. I think they make this whole developing process much simpler, and it gives you a better view of all your files, nib files in this case. So let's just jump right to it. What you can do with this, the storyboarding, there's many things, and I only know a handful, but I know enough to get an application going because I'm using this in my own first game. Excuse me. So you can manage all nib files in one place. I'll illustrate it in just a second, but basically you have all your nib files in one simple place. Whoops. Instead of having 5 or 10 different nib files, and you have to click on each file containing one nib file. Here you just have them all in one place, so it's much simpler to switch between your nib files, much easier and faster. And you can easily make something they call Segues, or Seek. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce this, but I'm going to go with Seek, between your nibs. And a seek is the transition from one nib to another. So you can easily have a button, and when you press that button, it'll switch views and load the other nib instead of the old one. And that's a seek. I'll illustrate it when we jump into Xcode. It'll make it much clearer. You can track the flow. You can see that this nib file is connected with a seek to this nib, and so forth. Again, this will all be illustrated, so bear with this. It's limited to iOS 5. It's important to know, because previously I actually thought it was Arc that limited you to iOS 5, but I was just proven wrong. So if you use storyboarding, you got to remember that you can only use iOS 5, or you can only develop for iOS 5. And there's many more. You can, you can pass data to your nib files using different methods that your nib files will call when a seek is being launched or called. But I haven't really dived into that, so I'm just going to show you the basics again. So let's just jump right to it. If I can get this away with this, and we open a new project. We take the single view application, and we say we love storyboarding. And of course we need to check the use storyboard, or else we can't use it, obviously. It says it right here actually. If you hold your cursor over, indicates whether the application should use an interface builder storyboard. This requires iOS 5, and if we take Arc, it says whether the new project should use automatic reference counting. So you can use Arc on previous versions of iOS, but storyboarding is limited to iOS 5. So here we go. We're going to place it there, it's good. And here we go. We have the app delegates, and we have the uController.h&m file, and then we have the storyboard. You can see now I only have one nib file, and this is connected to this view controller. This is pretty much functioning the same way as it did in previous versions of Xcode or without storyboarding, you can imagine that this storyboard here would just be viewcontroller.nip or .zip. But now it's actually a storyboard, and you can zoom out and you can see there's a lot of room to place new nip files, and we're just gonna go ahead and do that. So we go down here to the objects, and we're gonna take this as a view controller, and we're gonna drag it in. Gonna place it here. So now we actually have two nip files, two views here, and they are all connected to. Now this is connected to this view controller, and we could make this connected to that as well. I think we're just gonna go ahead and do that. So we say that this is a nip file to the view controller as well. So we're just gonna go ahead, do some changes to this one. Gonna change the background to, say, black, and we're gonna make this red. You interact with these and change the backgrounds and all other attributes, add buttons exactly like you did before. I'm gonna add a button here, we call it Seek, and then we're gonna add what we call a seek. Before, you would go in and have an action to that button, and then in that action method you would have it switch nips or switch views. But now we can just hold control key down and then left click on this button, you drag this out and you take it to this view controller here. You release and you can see it pops up with this storyboard Segues. It has push, a model and a custom. I'm personally only using model, so we're going to go ahead and do that. And now you can see it's drawn a line, and it says, okay, well this view controller here is connected to this one with a seek, so this can somehow load this and you can access it. Now there's a problem here, because if we access this one we don't have a way of going back, so we're just gonna go ahead and add a button to this. We double click on the on this to zoom in and add objects or change the attributes. We're gonna go ahead and add this object. We're gonna say back, and now we go ahead and do just like before. Hold the control key down, drag this down here, and we say model again. And now you can see that there's an arrow. Whoops. There's an arrow from this down to this as well. So these are now connected with Segues. So in theory, if we press this button, we should be brought up with this, and if we press the back button, we'll load this. So let's just try and run this, see if I did it right. Yeah, here we go. Black background, and we have a button. Press it, and we load this in. Press this, and we're back. Now, this is pretty much how Seek works, and you can see that it's really easy to make these transitions. Now, you don't need to do any code at all. I didn't type in a single line of code. You can make this entirely in IB Interface Builder. So it's really a nice feature. Just gonna go ahead and quit. Now, here we go. We can easily add another one. We can add 5 more, and we can connect them all to Segues. And it can get a bit messy if you start connecting a lot, because you can see these arrows. They can start being a little confusing. But you can often whoops, you can often do like this. You can arrange it any way you want to until you see you get a nice overview of it all, so that you can keep track of it and you don't get lost in all the different Segues. I personally like having them either in a row like this, where I can say, okay, well, this one will take me to this, and we could have another button that would take this one to this, and they would all be able to trace back as well. Or you can have them like this. It's also a nice one. It's easy to see where the arrows are going. But go ahead and experiment with that. Just gonna go and do one more thing with this storyboarding. Let's see. If you wanted this to be part of another class and not this view controller, all you do is simply add a new file, and then you choose the UI view controller subclass like you did before, but you don't say with nib for user interface because you already created that. Just gonna go and call this new view controller. And now you can press this little bar down here where it says view controller. You go up here to the identity inspector, double click here, and then you type in new view controller. And now you can see that this is of the new view controller class, and this is of the view controller. So now you actually have two nibs, and they are connected to each of their own class, exactly like before. But now you just have this way of keeping track of it all, having them all in one place. It can seem a little confusing at first, but when you start working with it, you're gonna have a hard time letting it go, but at least I know I am. And I'm just gonna show one more thing. We have this little arrow. This is basically the view that will get loaded in when your application launches. And we had it on the black one here before, so as suspected, we would get the black view presented to us first. But if we take this arrow and we drag it in here, you can see it's now in the new view controller. We will actually load up the red view controller and not the black. So you can also use storyboarding to see or to modify which view will be loaded in when your application launches. And let's just run the simulator one last time just to prove I'm right. And if I'm not, something is about to go horribly wrong. No. We have the reds, and we can still go back to the Segues like before. And that's basically it for this tutorial. I won't go into too much detail because frankly I don't know too much, but this is enough to get some basic applications going, and I'm using this for my own application as well. I think I have 5, 6 or 7 nibs, and if I needed that to make that without storyboarding, I would have 5, 6, 7 more files over here. But instead I just have one, and that's a storyboard. And instead of having to go through my code to see, well, this goes to this nib, this goes to this, I just have this interface builder, and I can easily see, okay, well, this one can go to this and back and forth, and I want to load in this, blah blah. So that's basically it. Try doing some work with it and look it up in the documentation. There are some methods for the storyboarding, and there's a particular method it will call when a Segue is being called, so you'll have a little window to pass in any data you need between those two view controllers. I haven't really used it yet, but I'm sure it works. At least the documentation claims that it is supposed to transfer data, or it's designed to transfer data. So I think this concludes this tutorial. Sorry for my accent this time. I think it went horribly wrong. I don't know what just went wrong. I might be a bit tired. I don't know. Anywho, thank you all for tuning in to this little introduction to storyboarding. And I'll be making another video very soon, but I'm not quite sure on what to cover yet. So stay tuned and you'll find out as soon as I do. Take care.